I've learned about Christianity, I've learned about Catholicism, I've learned about Islam, I've learned about many religions in my life. And I've struggled with my religion as well. But after all of this, I've become a Hindu. Okay, so now you're telling me that since I didn't choose Christianity, that I'm going to hell. I chose the best religion for me. If that makes me a good person, who are you to say that I'm not going to get into heaven if there is a heaven and a hell?
Let's be real honest.
All right.
The avatars made some truth claims. If what the avatars said is true, I am in for a very difficult next reincarnation. It ain't going to be pleasant for me. Jesus Christ made some truth claims. If what he said is true, I'm going to heaven because I put my faith in him. Muhammad made some truth claims. If what Muhammad said is true, I am going to hell. Guess what? That's the way it is with truth claims. If I make a truth claim, 2 plus 2 equals 4, what I'm saying is, it doesn't equal 5, it doesn't equal 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And if you're in my math class, and you write down 2 plus 2 equals 5, you're wrong. Why? Because it's a truth claim that I'm making. The avatars of Hinduism, which you have embraced, make some truth claims. I obviously am in for a very difficult next reincarnation if the avatar spoke the truth.
Right.
And if you reject Christ, and if Jesus spoke the truth, you're not going to heaven, according to Christ.
So you accept that there is a chance that Christianity may not be true?
I can't prove anything.
All right, that's all I'm trying to say.
I can't prove anything. Instead, what I do as a thinking human being is I base my life on evidence. I can promise you if Jesus was a first century Jimmy Jones, I never would believe it. I can promise you if Jesus had said, I'm going to die and rise from the dead, and if he wouldn't have pulled it off, if he would have stayed dead and not risen from the dead, then like Paul, I would never follow Christ. Paul said if Christ is not risen from the dead, we're a pack of fools. We're lost in our sins.
How do you know that he really did?
Because the historical evidence is he really did rise from the dead.
And where did this historical evidence come from?
The same place all historical evidence comes from, trustworthy eyewitnesses.
And how do you know that these eyewitnesses are telling the truth?
By putting their writings through tests, by looking for others who make comments, by studying archaeology to see if the place names that they list in a document are real or unreal, by looking at their honesty in the text. You know, if the Gospels talked about Peter, James, John, Matthew all being these perfect moral specimens, I'd get really skeptical. One of the reasons I trust the Gospels is because all the leaders of the first century church are a bunch of Christ deniers and wimps and Christ doubters. I like that. Sounds like me. That kind of honesty and vulnerability wins my trust.
What I'm trying to get at here is that every religion is based on faith. Faith in what you read, faith in the higher power. Would you agree with that?
Well, what do you mean when you say based on faith?
I have faith that there's a higher power. I have faith that there's a God. Of course, someone may come and tell me that there isn't, but I have faith, so I believe that it's true.
Yeah, you have faith in me that you would waste your time and effort to talk with me. And I appreciate that. I thank you. But let's be honest. It is faith. You're trusting me to be halfway intelligent enough to warrant you spending this time out of your busy schedule to talk with me.
Right.
You bet every relationship involves faith. But I dare say that if I was standing out here screaming at people, you all are going to hell, I don't think you'd be standing here talking as intelligently as you are with me. So your faith in me is not just a blind faith, it's a faith that's based on evidence. That I'm not going to stand here and just, scream at you that you're going to hell.
Right.
Good. So faith better be based on evidence. Otherwise, it's blind foolishness.
Okay. See, now what gets me is that a couple of people ago you said that evolution, you said, there's evidence, it's not really proven. It's
Right.
just a theory. But there is evidence for it. But when you want to say that things are proven, like resurrecting people.
I can't.
You're saying you can't say that's proven. You can say there's evidence.
I would never say that I could prove the resurrection of Christ. It's impossible. And if anybody tells you they can prove the resurrection of Christ, they're wrong. Why? To prove means to show it cannot be another way. I can't prove that. Now, we can get evidence that the resurrection took place, but not proof.
Okay.
You can't prove to me that your mother's not going to drop arsenic in your tea when you go home.
I sure can.
But the evidence is your mother really does love you. That's why you don't bring the chemistry kit to the table.
Right.
Okay, that's good faith. It's not a blind faith.
No.
It's a faith my mother really does love me. There's a history. She's really treated me respectfully and kindly. Therefore, I'm going to trust that the tea that she puts in front of me is wholesome.
That's not the argument at hand. I think we both have a very similar belief in the word faith. What we believe is the same meaning. But my whole thing is faith. It's universal. If I have faith in a higher power, and let's say Christianity does turn out to be true, if I acknowledge a higher power, I'm not an atheist. If I acknowledge a higher power, I respect the higher power. I live my life in a good moral way, in respect to a higher power. Why wouldn't I get into heaven? If I have that faith in the higher power, regardless of who it is. It should be about how you live your life, not who you recognize. You just recognize the higher power. It doesn't matter who it is.
Okay, see now, there are a lot of questions about this higher power.
Obviously.
Does this higher power love you or not? Does this higher power want you in his or her or their presence or not?
Well, according to you, if it's Jesus, then apparently he doesn't want anyone who doesn't acknowledge him as a higher power.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Very, very simple. Now, this is just an illustration.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Cliff. What's your name?
Sean.
Harry?
Sean.
Tom?
Sean.
Philip?
Sure.
Not only am I being rude, Sean, but I'm being incredibly arrogant. Because what I'm saying is, I know who you are, when in reality, I don't. I have to wait for you to open up and reveal to me your name. You're not Tom, you're not Harry, you're not Philip, you are Sean. And if I don't have the humility to allow you to be Sean, if I try and force you into this preconceived box, I'm never going to have the privilege of getting to know Sean.
Right.
Well, if that's true between you and me, that's far more true between God and me. I can't figure out God. If I'm going to get to know God, God's going to have to reveal who on earth God is. Because I ain't smart enough to figure out God.
To compare it to a name, to compare God to a name, I think is blasphemy. To say that God could have a name, it's beyond him. He's eternal. He's all powerful. A name cannot describe God. You can't put it as simply, and it's just as that. It's not a box. It's eternal. And okay, I get your little demonstration here, the whole Tom Philip thing. But when there's so many choices, now I'm not like in that illustration. I said my name was Sean.
Right.
But at the same time, and when you walk through, let's say, any street in any town, you'll maybe see a temple, you'll see a mosque, you'll see a church, you'll see a lot of things. God could reveal himself to you in many ways. You're saying that the only way he's revealing himself to you is through the Christian way, when there's many ways, and you're accepting only your way.
When I read the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads, I begin to understand that Brahman, everything is part of God. That contradicts the Quran, that contradicts the Torah, that contradicts Jesus. Because both the Quran and the Bible teach that God is the creator and this is the creation, whereas the Vedas and Upanishads insist everything is part of God. Now those are contradictory revelations.
I agree.
So they both can't be true.
Exactly. But
So they're making truth claims, and now I've got to decide, who am I going to trust?
right. But it's up to the person to decide.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, how can you say that if let's say, since I did choose Hinduism, that made me a better person. I don't think
Right.
anyone can ever argue that.
Uh-huh.
No one can argue that for me. If that made me a better person,
Yes.
and heaven does exist,
You know?
who is God to deny me right into heaven?
Okay, because God is holy, according to Christ, evil cannot dwell in God's presence.
You're saying I'm evil.
No, I'm talking about myself.
Oh,
Okay?
Fair.
I have a problem with evil. I have a problem with sin. And because God is holy, regardless of how many homeless people I feed, regardless of what kind of great minister I am, I have separated myself from God by sinning. According to Christ, God is just, and the penalty for my sin is death and hell. But God is also merciful. And the justice and the mercy of God come together at the cross of Jesus Christ, where he bleeds and dies to pay the just penalty for my wrongdoing. E. Stanley Jones was a tremendous missionary in India, Christian missionary in India. He was once talking to a Hindu government official about the cross of Christ. And this Hindu government official has said, listen, it makes no sense. God become a human being, bleeding and dying on a cross for my sin? Makes no sense. A short time afterwards, that Hindu government official committed adultery. His conscience convicted him. He turns to his wife and says, I committed adultery. He watches her collapse in grief, in pain. Then he watches her stand up and say, I want you to know that I forgive you and I want to get our marriage back on track. That Hindu government official communicated to E. Stanley Jones, now I know what it's like to see love crucified by sin. Evil is real. The penalty for evil is death. Christ is God in human form, taking the hit, taking the penalty for our sin, thereby offering us forgiveness. It's love crucified by sin.
Okay.
Now, if I reject Christ, the reason I go to hell is because I'm rejecting God's offer of forgiveness for my sin. But if I've never sinned, if I'm a perfect person, I go to heaven. But if I reject Christ, I am rejecting God's offer of forgiveness. That's why I go to hell, because of my evil, my sin. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, but I guess we're just gonna have to agree to disagree,
Right.
because I believe that to say that Christianity is the only way you should be forgiven. It's just, I don't believe it.
You're right, it's a truth claim.
Right.
The avatars make truth claims also. And
Right.
Muhammad makes truth claims,
Right.
and the atheist here in America makes truth claims.
Everyone makes it.
Exactly. Everyone makes truth claims, which means if you disagree with them from their truth claim, you're wrong.